All right, Homaloo, first question. So why did you decide to actually dive in and take the SE?
Well, for me, it was more of like a long-term decision. Since I decided to stay in structural engineering long-term, I figured the SE was just the way to go for me to just better myself and fill some of those knowledge gaps in materials that I don't design as much and whatnot. So that was the main reason. And I decided to take it now just because I know the longer I wait, the harder it gets to just dedicate so much time in studying for this exam.
Do you feel like you were one of the younger people when you were sitting for your exam? Did you feel like you're on the kind of earlier side for anyone who's on the fence out there, like thinking you're too early to or too young to take it or don't have enough experience? What were your thoughts?
I think there was a wide range. And when I say wide, I mean really wide. I was probably on the younger side. Maybe there were some girls there who were maybe around my age. I'm 27, by the way. But not next to me, like maybe a couple rows over, there was this guy. I think he was maybe on his 60s. I'm not sure. And he had the steel manual from the 80s. It was one that I had never seen before. He pulled it, like he got to his chair and he was reading a newspaper, and then he had all these old codes. I was so intrigued by that after the exam, I went up and talked to him just because I was curious, how he did with like an old manual, the steel manual, and all of that. So I definitely don't feel like it's an exam that I was too young to take it, nor too old to take it. I think it really depends on the person. My recommendation for younger engineers, and when I say younger, I mean younger than me, who have, I have 4 years of experience, who have 4 years or less. I always tell them, as soon as you feel like your work is not overwhelming to the point that you're learning company standards, you're learning all the very basics of your job. As soon as you're actually focusing more on content and like technical content, that is a good sign that you're good to start studying, because you already can be productive on the more nitty-picky side of your job, just the regular workflows and standards of your company. And now you can really focus on the technical side. That's usually my take when I have this conversation with younger engineers.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because I know that talking with people relatively my age, my coworkers, and I'm 30, so I'm the old man in the group here, apparently.
Oh wow, so much older.
Yeah, so much wiser. No, I probably not the same amount as you. That was always the discussion or the barrier of, do I take the SE or do I not? Is like, oh, well, am I old enough? Like, oh, I'm still too young. Like, I have no business knowing enough to take that exam. And that's, I think that's not true. It's, you could take that. I mean, you could take the exam out of school if you wanted to. I don't know if you're technically allowed to, but like if you study enough and you are comfortable enough with structural design and structural engineering, and anybody could pass it. There's no gate that says like, oh, you don't know enough. You couldn't possibly know enough. You can't take this. You have to wait.
Yeah, and I'd say for that, usually like if you want to take it earlier, like I took it earlier. And even though I have 4 years of experience, I don't actually have 4 years within building design. For a little over 2 years, I worked as a curtain wall engineer, which that is very, very different than traditional structural engineering. I learned the basics about load path, about structural engineering in general, but all that I was designing was glass, aluminum panels, mullions, transoms, all that metal panels for high-rise buildings. And then in 2020, when I switched companies and I came to this more traditional company where I'm doing more building design, I hadn't designed a concrete beam since college. So it was quite a transition. And I would say for me, taking it now was, I definitely needed to study more just because I wasn't exposed to the traditional side of design for longer. And that's what I would say for younger people as well, that it's not impossible, definitely not. And actually, I would recommend you take it earlier because it's going to make you study more and grow faster in your career, as opposed to just trying to learn things at work, because things at work, they will come up, but you may go 1-2 years without touching wood or without touching masonry design and specific, checks, maybe a post-tension slab, whatever it is, you're not exposed to these things as often as you would be if you're studying for the exam, because you just have to cover them all. There's no escape.
I couldn't agree more. I think your response is spot on. Yeah, if you want to know more, if you want to, I talk about it a lot on my own channel, if you want to know something, like, yes, it's always going to be a little scary because it's like, oh, I don't know how to do it. But as soon as you dive in and you make the effort to learn it, even if you don't need to be perfect at it, but you become familiar with it, and then you practice with it yourself in your own time, and now it becomes a tool for you to use to be a better structural engineer. So how, you're talking about it took you a little longer, you think, in terms of the study process. How long do you think you prepared for the SC? And I believe you said that you took the gravity portion this time around?
Yes. Sorry, I don't know if I clarified that in the beginning. I took just gravity. I ended up studying a little bit longer because I actually signed up for both gravity and lateral, because I'll actually be a dad at the end of this year. So I wanted to get both exams out of the way. And I'm originally from Brazil, so I had this 2-week trip already planned. And I actually have it all written down here that it got to a point that I had to switch to lateral, but I just didn't feel comfortable switching to lateral because I felt like I still needed to review a lot of stuff for gravity. And then I decided to drop lateral and just keep studying for gravity. And I have something here that I can show to you guys is my time log. And I think this was extremely important for me for the SE exam, and even when I took the PE as well, just to make sure that I was on track. Every time I went to study, I logged my time and I put a date, how many hours I studied, and then just a short description of what I did. And it was easy for me to do it this time because I did it for the PE exam, and boy, it adds up. I was like, holy cow, I never thought I'd be, amounting to these many hours. And I can actually pull it up here. So I was at 146 hours when I needed to switch to the lateral portion, but I knew I couldn't with my trip planned and all that stuff. So I kept going, and that totaled 242 hours for just gravity. And I know that 242 is on the higher side, but usually to that I would say that because I had a little bit less experience, I wanted to study more. I wanted to spend the extra time going through all these subjects. And it doesn't mean that I'll pass. I may still not pass the exam. I'm not necessarily 100% confident that I passed, but I know that even if I failed the exam this time, those 242 hours that I spent will be extremely helpful, because a second time around I'd be just reviewing the stuff that I didn't do as well on, and just brushing up on what I did well on. So I guess we'll see that in December, but that's how long I studied.
Okay, so for everybody out there wondering, budgeting, 242, that's the number to beat.
I'll let you know in December.
Yeah, I think he got me by a little bit. I lost track of my hours, but I definitely was up in that 200 range for sure. So it's not a small amount that most people put into it when they sign up for this thing.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would do differently looking back? Whether if you're just starting from scratch or midway, would you mix something up?
That's a good question, because I think the main thing that I would do different would be having a schedule from the get-go. When I started to study for the exam, I started just logging my time, but I didn't really allocate properly how long I'd be studying each subject. And that's ultimately why I didn't switch to lateral, because I felt like I needed to spend a lot more time on these subjects that I was studying. For example, for wood design, I as I was studying for it, I was like, oh, I can just spend, a week studying wood, and that'll be okay. And then I spent over 2 weeks, and I was still wanting to study more. It's that type of stuff that you don't know until you actually start studying. So for me personally, it would be having that schedule a little bit more divided up front. This way I wouldn't be so anxious at times because I was falling behind. That goes along with just another advice to future test takers, is that just be able to adjust, because you see that as you study, things don't go as planned. There are days that you were hoping to study and you end up not studying. So you have to be able to adjust, and having as much information as possible as far as logging your time and as far as trying to update your schedule accordingly is key, so that you keep going on this marathon. It's not a sprint. You just got to make sure that you're putting in, even if it's just a little bit of time, putting it in every day or every couple of days, however your schedule is laid out.
Yeah. Those rabbit holes. You could be studying something, you're like, oh, today it's all about flexural design checks for wood members, and then all of a sudden you're reading the appendix like 3 hours later in this bizarre subsection on like this strange species of wood, and you're like, why am I here? And you're like, oh, but it's so interesting. And I caught myself doing that so often, where it's just, you're like, what do they mean by this? Oh, what do they mean by that? And you go to you can just keep going. There's so much literature to absorb. And when you're in that kind of mindset, I found myself very easily like, oh, I want to know more. I want to know more.
Yeah.
Oh, I hear ya. You've done the studying, and now it's the day of the exam. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of your exam day experience? Obviously, we're not talking what happened during the exam and stuff like that, to stay in guidelines with the jurisdiction or the testing authorities. But what was your overall experience? What was it like?
So I think this varies a lot depending on where you take the exam. So I took the exam in Florida, and it's this small town of Lakeland here in Florida. The good thing is that they had a hotel that was literally next to the exam venue. So I literally would have breakfast at the hotel and just walk a little bit and be where the room was to take the exam. That was great. And the other thing was I had forgotten to buy a watch, because just like for the PE exam, if you took it paper-based, they don't always have a watch or a clock nearby you. So and they only tell you how much time you have left. At least that was my experience. I don't know if that was yours. Only 15 minutes before the exam is over. So the night before, I went to Walmart and got a nice $10 watch.
Nice.
And then this really saved me, because sure enough, they didn't have any way to tell me time, and it was very helpful. I was nervous a little bit, going into it, and this is not anything about the specifics of the exam, but just test taking strategies that I practiced when I was studying really helped me to be less nervous. And a specific one that I'd like to share is just that I'm a really slow test taker in general, and instead of trying to solve the questions as I went, I read the entire exam in the morning, the AM portion, and I only solved the questions that were no brainer. It was just a diagram that I had to pick one or whatever. And sure, those were not many. Those were, I think, maybe just about 3 questions or so, however many. And that at least got my juices, flowing. Mm-hmm. And then I spent the first, 18 minutes or so doing that. And I read the entire exam. I had categorized the questions as easy, medium, or hard. So I was doing 2 things. In 18 minutes, I solved 3 questions, and I read the entire exam and just had them categorized, which that gave me a little bit more peace of mind and got my juices flowing, because I knew all that was ahead of me. It wasn't like I was solving one question and afraid of the next question that was popping up, because it could be a hard question. And that really helped me overcome this fear that I had of just not being able to finish the exam. So that's my whole exam day experience. Overall, it was not as bad as I thought it could be.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I found it wasn't as daunting when you're actually in it, you know? Like it's always that lead up. So how did you feel? So for anybody out there who's unfamiliar, the test is split up into 2 sections. There's the AM morning breath section, and then the PM, I guess, in-depth section, which is a written response. Which did you feel more comfortable with, more confident on? What are your thoughts?
I felt more confident on the AM portion, the multiple choice questions. And again, I think because of that test taking strategy that I implemented, I was able to get through all the questions and at the end only blindly guessed, 2 questions. So that also helped me feel better going into the afternoon, because I didn't feel like I didn't answer, 15 questions and had to guess them there, then I'd be really in trouble. So I definitely felt better for the AM portion. And then the PM portion, which is more of the essay type of questions, they may seem like you have a lot of time because it's 1 hour for each problem. And you're like, oh, you have a whole hour to solve a problem? That seems like a lot of time after you're doing a problem, every 6 minutes in the morning.
Yeah.
But in reality, most of the questions are usually like 4 or 5 letters or sub questions. So you're really answering like, say 5 questions. So it's not that much time that you have. I actually ran out of time in the afternoon, and that's why I didn't feel as confident in the afternoon. And I don't know, for those who don't know, this exam is going to be computer based in 2024. It's scheduled, and maybe we can do a whole separate video in either of our channels about this. But right now, if I fail the afternoon, like I'm not feeling as good about the afternoon, and I got 1 question that is unacceptable, I failed the entire exam. Which, when it switches to computer based, at least that's one of the benefits. I know there are several cons as well, is that if you can pass just the morning, or you can pass just the afternoon, those are decoupled.
Yeah, some changing of strategies and rules and criteria coming up in the not too distant future. So anyone who's, again, kind of on the fence or thinking of preparing and jumping in on this, do your research on that, because there are some changes coming. In conjunction with that, then, any additional advice for future test takers?
I'd say don't be afraid. It seems like a monster. It's almost like a myth when you join structural engineering, or maybe you're even in college and you hear about the last exam a structural engineer can take. It's like climbing Mount Everest, you get there and then it's game over. You did it all in structural engineering. And it is hard. I mean, I'm not saying it's an easy exam, but after you do it and you're like, wow, I can actually do it, and you can do it too. Like, if you want to further yourself in structural engineering, and if you want to do this, long term, don't be scared. Just buckle down and use those test taking techniques and create a schedule and actually study, because you can also do it. It's not something for somebody that is a genius that can take this exam and pass. You may not pass the first time, it may take a couple times, but you can do it. So I think that's my biggest take away from this test, is that I was scared before to take it, and now I feel like even if I fail, at least I'm not scared to take this beast, So, and I regardless, I still have lateral to go. So I guess we both do, right? Because you also took gravity.
Yep.
Yeah.
Still many more hours and steps to go before we get to the finish line, but 100% agree with you as well. It's not this big scary thing anymore. It's just solving problems like we do every single day. Yeah. You clearly are going to have a little bit more free time. What do you plan kind of to do with that free time?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, We're growing our family here in a couple months, so I'm definitely spending more time just with my wife and doing all things baby, preparing cribs and whatnot. So it's been nice to just enjoy, that phase outside of all this, studying and all that stuff. I've been able to focus a little bit more on my health as well, just working out and trying to, which this is another thing that at least when I go into lateral, I hope I don't neglect, is just incorporate that into my study schedule. Like if I'm trying to work out a little bit in the morning, try to still do that while I study, maybe not as much, but just so I don't necessarily neglect, my health, just because I have to put so many hours into this exam. So it's been nice to be going on jogs here and there, working out a little bit, spending time with my family. So that's what I've been doing, and I plan to enjoy every second of it until I start studying again.
Awesome. Well, it sounds well balanced. Sounds like a schedule that a lot of people, including myself, could probably do a little bit better job of balancing. So that's good. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. All right, Homalu. Well, I appreciate all of the questions I was able to bombard you with today. I think you gave us a lot of great insight on the SE, the kind of the experience of taking it, the preparation involved, the mindset talked about a little bit there, which is really, really crucial. People want to know more about you or get in contact with you.
I really appreciate you having me here on your channel, Rich. Kestava was a channel that I actually started watching back when I was taking the PE, and it actually motivated me to create my channel as well back, I don't know, in 2020. And it's really cool to just, be able to be here and chatting with you. My channel is called Quick Question Engineering. We have very similar structural engineering content. So that's the best way to reach me, is either shooting me an email or leaving a comment there, and I'll be sure to get back to you.
Awesome. Well, team, make sure to check him out when you have a second. He's growing just like we are. In all honesty, the structural engineering community on the internet, YouTube, whatever, is still so small in comparison to everything else. So we got to stick together. It's always great to hear feedback from other professionals in the space and to get your opinion. So I do appreciate you taking the time today. Make sure to like, subscribe, check out Homalu's channel. And until next time, this is Rich with Team Kestava, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.
See you guys
later.